Christian Spilfogel, a professional real estate investor. I always hear people calling themselves, I'm an investor. You are a professional investor.
Yeah.
Welcome to our podcast. We are very excited to learn from your experience. Every event I go to across Canada, this guy is on the stage. Like everywhere I go, this guy is on the stage. And when I'm not gonna lie, first time I met you, I'm like, I don't see this guy on the stage. You're just
Right.
you occurred to me like a very shy, very polite guy. And then I watched a couple of podcasts and I got to know you after. I'm like, no, this guy got balls. This guy got experience. This guy got a sense of humor. Get the best comments on Facebook from you all the time.
Oh, I guess that's the way I roll. So
How are we feeling today, Christian?
I'm actually doing fantastic. So having a good day so far.
That's awesome. Are you ready for the signature question?
The signature question, okay, give it to me.
Christian, when did you make your first million?
Oh boy. When did I make my first million? Probably made it passively when I was maybe about 30, 35. That point.
Passively.
Yeah.
So how did you make it passively?
Well, because what I do is I take the money that I have and I invest it in appreciating assets. That's really fundamentally what I do. And I try and avoid putting money into depreciating assets. You know, we just get into some of the simple mechanics. If you think about it, it's, everybody likes a nice flash car. Well, I like nice cars too, but I don't go and buy them brand new, right? What I would do is buy a nice car, like a nice Jaguar XJR or an AMG, etc. But I'd let someone else take the depreciation up front. And it would take, I'd buy them maybe 4 years old. They'd have like 60,000 kilometers on them. But they were practically new for all intents and purposes. And they were beautiful cars, high-performing cars. But you know what? All the money that I saved, I let someone else take that $100,000 depreciation over the first 4 years. And I get to put that money back into some other investment. So either real estate or, you mentioned that I do a lot of real estate. And I do, right? But I also invest as an angel funder for small tech companies.
Okay.
Right? Because tech's actually my first love, right? And you may not know that about me, but I spent a great deal of my career in the technology field.
Actually, Matt, when he introduced us, he told me you're more on the tech side and then real estate. So tell me more about your tech history. Like, how did you start? Did you study this major or you just fell in love with it?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it. This is something that might not surprise you. I actually studied physics in university.
No, that doesn't surprise me.
So I studied physics in university. I later on added computer science to that, but that was kind of the path I was down. I thought I'd be a subatomic physicist and, working at Fermi Labs or CERN or something along that lines. And then I worked for a government research institute back shortly, midway through university, actually. And at that time, I discovered I could not work for the government. I was simply not wired for it. And
How many years?
Oh, it wasn't long. It was about 4 months. That's all it took for me to realize that it was like, nah, this is not for me. And I had fun there, but I was constantly told that I was working too hard, right? And that I was starting to make people look bad.
Wow.
Because, I think you've gotten to know me a little bit now. I'm not exactly a 9-to-5er. I work and I play and I do a lot of fun things. But for me, I'm always on. If I'm passionate about something, whether it's a real estate deal or it's a new tech company or it's something along that lines, I'm on it until I'm too tired to be on it. So that means that it might be a 16-hour day or it might be a 20-hour day or it might be, a full week of that stuff or a month of that stuff in a stretch. But I get really very interested in what I'm doing and I need to learn and understand absolutely everything about it. That is, to me, the fun part. So
learning. You love learning.
I love learning, absolutely.
The more you learn, the more you earn.
Well, I like to learn and the earning comes after, but it's not necessarily I learn because I want to earn. I learn because I'm passionate about what it is that I'm doing. So when I got into real estate, it wasn't just about collecting houses. I wanted to figure out, okay, well, how do you really make money at this stuff? And how does it really work? And what's the industry like?
Did you get real estate before or after the million?
That was, the million kind of came as part of real estate. But I didn't know much about it at the time. So call it an accidental millionaire.
Okay, accidental millionaire. And didn't come fully from real estate. It was from real estate and other investments.
Yeah.
And the other investments were in tech.
They were primarily in technology.
Do you want to share like the name of the company that you invested in? What was the investment? How much did you put in? What was the appreciation? How much is the percentage?
Sure. I mean, that was a long time ago. And, I'm smarter now. So what I would say is that what I learned at the time is that you just have to start investing. So you have to start putting money into something which is going to make you more money. And it doesn't matter whether you're smart about it at the time or not. You just need to get going on it. On reflection, knowing what I know now, that money would have come at me a lot faster. Right, because I'm much more efficient about it. But at the time, I was more interested in my tech career, et cetera, and then I was investing on the side, and I was trying to make sure I was making smart decisions. I mean, one of the smart decisions that we made at the time, and it may sound very mundane, but we made a conscious decision in our family that we were going to survive on one income. So my wife was working too, but what we did is we said, okay, we're going to live on my income, and then all the money that she had, that she earned, we put immediately towards other types of investments. So these days, a lot of people think, okay, well, we always have to do a dual income. We had that same pressure, right, when I had a young family. And even before that, it was, all of our friends were living off two incomes. We made the conscious decision to live on one income. And so what that allowed us to do was, as I said, we could invest all that money. So first of all, we paid down our mortgage very quickly. Our first house we were able to pay down in 4 or 5 years. That built a nest egg of equity that we then used to buy a second house. And then that house we largely paid off, and then we went and bought the house, our dream house, right, and where we live today. So it was very methodical in our approach of how we were doing it. What I do now is I know how to make money, earn more money. At the time, I was kind of figuring I had money that I wanted to sock away and build the equity. And so both approaches are reasonable, but the problem with storing or socking away money like that is you're really just storing money and you're not necessarily growing it or making it. So what I've learned now is figure out how to take an investment and turn it into new money. So adding value to whatever you do. And as soon as you add value, you create new money.
So how do you do that?
So there's a lot of different ways to do that. The way that I described things before, I took the money, I stored it in real estate, or you can store it in gold, or you can store it in a stock.
Wait for it to appreciate.
Yeah, and effectively you wait for it to appreciate, but what we also have to understand is it's not really appreciating. What's happening is your currency is devaluing. So that's why I say the money's just stored, but it's at least inflation hedge storage. So gold, real estate, whatever, that's just,
It's going to save your ass.
Yeah.
If there's inflation, if shit goes
That's
down,
right. So you need to make sure that money that you have is in a inflation hedged investment. So that's the first thing to happen, right? And that's your baseline. But to make money, it's all about adding value. So let me give you some examples from, say, the real estate world.
To make money, it's all about adding value.
That is.
Lots of people need to hear this.
If you create value, you're creating new money. Because money isn't real, okay? It's not actually grounded in anything. It's fiat currency. That's what we also have to understand. Okay, so as soon as you create new value, you have created new money, just out of thin air. That's actually how it works. So let's say we can take a simple real estate example because I think it's very tangible for people.
Yeah.
Let's say you take what's very popular these days is a thing called a BRRRR method, right? Which is a buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. What they're really saying, and you extend it a little bit and you suite a building. So you'll take, say a high ranch bungalow, and then you'll add another unit in there. So now you've got 2 units in there. Okay, you've added value. The investment you put in there might be $100,000, but the new value of the building is now $200,000. So now when you go to sell it or you go to refinance it, you're now working at a higher equity base. So you've created new money by just putting a little bit of money in. Now we do things on a bigger scale, right? We're usually converting, for example, we took a manufacturing building that was about 16,000 square feet. We divided it into 15 light industrial units. By doing that, we increased the revenue per square foot by about 50%, all by just building 50%. Walls and changing the business model.
Wow. And how much did you make money on this property?
Well, I'll give you the numbers on that one. I bought that one in 2017 for about net 850. So there's a whole other story behind this one, right? But it started at 900, but I ended up buying it for 850. And I just refinanced that in December with a value of about 2.8 million. Okay, and most of that value was created in the first 2 years.
So you didn't sell it. You rented it, and now you refinance.
No, I don't sell anything.
You don't sell.
No.
You just refinance, get more money.
Yeah, get more money out, take that equity and go do more stuff and buy more stuff, build more stuff, add more value, etc.
And you bought it just pre-COVID?
Yeah, it was about 2 years before COVID, easily.
You said 2018?
2017.
2017, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You never sell. Now it's rented. Was it easy to rent it?
Well, no, this is why, often you buy distressed properties. I like buying distressed properties where things have just gone horribly wrong. And I've got some great war stories if you ever want to hear them.
Yeah, I'd like to hear. I want you to select 2 stories and give it to us.
So often you either have to add value, right, or someone else has taken the value out of the business. So let's say if it was a conventional business, if somebody is running that business into the ground, a smart guy like yourself might step in and say, I know how to save this business. So by saving the business, creating all the, the goodwill, the customer loyalty, increasing the cash flow and the revenue stream, you've now created value in that business that someone else is willing to pay for, and a bank might be willing to refinance. Real estate is exactly the same kind of thing, but you're dealing with the asset itself, you're dealing with the business model that's within that real estate. So if you have a building and you change the building, you can add some value to it. But what the banks are really looking for, and what people are generally looking for, is what's the business model that's running inside it. So that could be a long-term rental, right? It could be short-term rental, executive rentals, it could be commercial rentals, it could be whatever it is, whatever model you want. There could be arbitrage involved, which is just another level of business. So so that's basically how you end up doing all that stuff. So that particular business was distressed in the sense that there was no manufacturing. The manufacturer had left, someone else had bought it, they didn't really know what to do with it, they couldn't sell it as a manufacturing building. So I looked at it and I said, well, I'm not going to do it as a manufacturing building, but I know there's a lot of demand for light industrial customers. So light industrial, people are often asking, well, what is that? So light industrial would be, for example, your HVAC companies, your electricians, your plumbers, your builders, etc.
Big market, massive market.
That's right. So they've got trucks, they've got people, they have supplies. They don't necessarily want to buy a giant building because they're not there from their business perspective, but they need a slot. They might need 1,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet, a couple of offices, a man door, and a giant bay. So that's what we built. And as it turns out, we could fill those in an instant, right? So that building filled up very, very quickly. And so we had a new revenue stream. And just like you value any other business, it comes down to the net operating income. So it's always a multiple of the net operating income. When you're dealing with small properties, houses, duplexes, triplexes, it's largely a retail market, so it's what people are willing to pay for it. When you're doing a commercial property, it's the same as a business, so multiple on the income stream. So revenue minus expenses, you get a net operating income, and it's a multiple on that. So your business, for example, would be valued based on some multiple of the income stream or some multiple of EBITDA. So if you can do something to expand that income stream or the EBITDA, then you effectively increase the value of that business because the multipliers are usually comps with related businesses. So whether it's real estate or it's a grocery business or it's a retail store, etc., they'll say, well, comparables, other sales that have happened in the industry are a multiplier of that particular EBITDA or that income. So that's why there's always a focus by those businesses to expand that income all the time because it changes the value of the business. It changes their ability to what they could sell it for, the credit that lenders are willing to give them in order to be able to do expansion of their business. Real estate is exactly the same thing. So let's go back to that industrial property. I cut it up into basically 15 units. Some people rented multiple units, et cetera, but that's fine. My price per square foot was effectively 50% higher by doing that than if I did it as a factory. Okay, so immediately that's a top line revenue piece. It didn't affect my expenses because these are what are called triple net leases. So usually the tenants are paying the utilities, et cetera.
Right.
So when you increase the revenue by that amount, it translates directly to the net operating income. And now it's a multiplier of the net operating income. All that additional revenue that I brought in immediately increased the value of the building by more than 50%.
Wow.
So that's basically how we end up doing these kinds of things. I'll give you another example through COVID. We had some office space. Office space right now, nobody thinks is a great thing to have. And during COVID, you'd be absolutely ridiculous to buy office space, right? So
did you buy one?
I didn't, but I had some office space.
Okay.
Right? And, in the early parts of COVID, we're more in a defensive mode. We were trying to make sure, because we didn't know where this was going to go. We didn't know if this was going to result in a major economic crisis in the world or what. So
did you personally think it's going to go like 3 years? It's going to be like that
at the
long?
time? No.
Yeah, I thought it's going to be like 2 weeks. I'm like, 2 weeks, we'll be fine.
I didn't know it was going to last that long, but what I was concerned about was what was going to happen, right? So if the economy tanked, if people couldn't afford to pay their rents, if they couldn't afford to pay their leases on the commercial space, what was going to happen there? Because we do depend on that revenue stream to service everything in our business.
Yeah.
And if the economy truly tanked, we could be in a bad situation. So we went very quickly into optimizing our cash flow, building cash reserves, etc. And we took advantage of some of the lenders offering deferrals as well, which they were offering at the commercial level. I had CIBC, for example, just say, hey, we're going to automatically give you a 6-month deferral on your loans, right? We'll just tack it on to the end of your loan. Now, as someone who's always about optimizing cash flow, if the bank is willing to defer debt, right, and I don't have to pay for it right now, I love that, because inflation is going to take care of that debt in the end. So when they offered it to me, I said, I had one question: will this affect my ability to borrow money again in the future with you guys? And they said no. And I said, then I'm fine, do it. That's it.
So you're big on borrowing.
100%.
Whatever you can do to borrow, you borrow more and more.
You do, but
with the right rates.
Well, you have to manage it like anything. And the rate is one thing, right? Other terms are important too. But we have to understand that inflation, it takes care of our debt. So the asset doesn't change if you don't do anything to it. So let's take a simple example again, a house. You buy a house, you buy for your family right now. 10 years from now, it's still a house. It didn't really change, okay? So did the value of that asset really change? Not really.
It's getting older.
It's getting older, so it may have depreciated a bit, and that's fair. But let's hold that constant for now and say you're maintaining it and keeping it up. Let's assume for a moment that there isn't serious immigration that's coming in that's driving things up, because that does have an effect. But if we look at it over a long-term period, the asset really doesn't change. A single-family home is a single-family home. But what did change is the debt that you had with it. It gets cheaper and cheaper over time. Inflation is reducing your overall debt. So let me use an extreme example. My parents bought their first house in 1965. Okay? They paid, I believe Dad paid $12,000.
Wow, that's a single home.
As a single family
maybe
home.
Maybe like an acre around it.
Today, it would be worth probably about $400,000. It's just a bungalow, so it wasn't much, but it was $400,000 since 1965. But it's still a single-family home. What changed? Okay, let's say he maintained that debt of $12,000, and he never paid off any of the principal. He just paid the interest on it. So you have now $12,000 debt, and the value of the property is $400,000. $12,000 you could pay off with a credit card today, right?
That's true.
That's the value of that currency. All that happened was that debt got cheaper over time because of inflation. And this is why governments actually do like inflation. They don't necessarily like the impacts of high inflation, but higher inflation makes the national debt cheaper. So
interesting.
Yeah. And just like that
explains so many things.
It really does.
That explains so many things.
Yeah. But that's why with debt, you have to manage it carefully. Don't get me wrong. Like it's like handling a snake, okay? So you have to treat it with respect. You have to manage it, manage the risk associated with it. But I'd rather take on debt and have the cash available than have to worry about getting debt later or finding cash later. So whenever times get uncertain, I start to go into a cash position. And I did that at the beginning of COVID, and I'm doing it right now. And I don't know if I should ever say this on a public podcast, but I'm in a high cash position right now. Okay? So I'm in a position where I can weather any storm that the economy might throw at us. So if interest rates go through the roof right now, I'm fine. I'm secure. I've got construction projects on the go. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to make sure I have cash. Those things are capital intensive. So if things go weird in the construction side of things, I have cash reserves to deal with it. And if I don't end up having to worry about the economy or my construction projects, then I've got cash to buy distressed assets, which are almost certainly going to happen over the next little while.
Is there any disadvantage for having all this cash, like tax disadvantage?
None at all, right? So that's the key when you do, like, that's why I don't sell stuff. If I sell it, I have to pay tax. If I refinance it, I get to keep it, and I get the money out, and I can use that money tax-free. There's no impact, no penalty to that. I mean, I pay tax on the rents, right, or at least the income associated with the rents, but on a refinance situation, because you're taking money out, right, there's no tax implication to that.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. I want to get some tips from you about tax, but we'll get back to this one later.
Well, I'm not an accountant.
I watch couple podcasts for you, and I know you have some tips.
Okay.
Okay? You know which podcast I'm talking about now?
I have no idea. I've done a number of them.
Okay, we'll get back to this one. Have you ever had employees? And do you have employees right now, like
do.
on payroll?
Yep.
How did you learn how to hire, fire, train an employee?
Great question, because I first had employees when I was probably about 26. I was working for a corporation at the time, and I was promoted fairly quickly through the tech industry. So I'd say at my peak, I had about maybe 350 employees, and in terms of direct reports, and then probably more than that if you consider indirect reports. And then in my current business, in our investment business, we have a small team, right? But it's the same kind of principles that apply. When I first started out, I had no training as being a manager. I didn't know what it was like to really manage people, but you learn fast. And one of the things that I learned very quickly is people will surprise you. You just trust them. Surprise in a positive way, right, is what I mean by that. And most people have an intention to do the right thing, right? And usually when they can't do the right thing, it's because there's something missing. Training, or maybe guidance, or not the right set of objectives, etc.
It's the captain, it's not the soldier.
Well, that's right. Yeah, and Sun Tzu would tell you the same thing, right? If the soldiers, and I'm going to try and paraphrase what he said, but if the soldiers don't know what they're doing, then initially it's the fault of the soldier. So you correct them. If the soldier still can't do the right thing, it's the fault of the captain.
Because he didn't know how to correct them.
That's right. You know, these are things I've learned later in life, right? But I found that if you give people appropriate objectives, the right constraints to work within, they will almost always exceed your expectations. I'd say like 80% of the time.
That's a strong 80% though.
Yeah.
Even these days.
Yeah.
Are you still hiring now? Are you getting new hirees from the new generation, from the new mentalities, work mentalities?
My first Gen Z's actually my younger daughter, who joined our business a few years ago. And admittedly, Gen Z's are a little bit different, right? But I don't know that they're different from me. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong.
Can you train me? No, I'm not joking. So I started hiring, firing, learning how to train, learning how to deal with team. I've never worked in a big corporation.
Yeah.
And I've never been trained professionally. I've done a handful of mistakes. I've lost some good talents because I wasn't knowledgeable enough. And now I'm way better. I think I have a happy team. We're working, we're improving, etc. I still think I can do 10 times better. And I've been really trying to learn. I'm not going to read books to learn.
No.
I'm going to hire someone to teach me who's been through this before.
Right.
And who has this high rates. Seriously.
Yeah.
I always feel that everyone has a talent and I want to try to bring it up. At some points, I still give up on some people. And I always wonder, did I do something wrong?
And that's a good question.
Right.
So, and it's important that you ask yourself that, because sometimes it isn't, right? Sometimes you didn't do anything wrong.
Exactly.
You know, and not everybody's cut out. Sometimes it's not the right fit for the job either.
Not the right match between you and the employee. I think this is one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
Someone is there, but they're not sure if they should be there, so they're not giving it their 100%. But I think if you can manage a team, if you can have a happy team, happy employees, you can do so much, even with real estate investing or anything, because now you have 10 brains working instead of one brain.
That's exactly it.
Right? So like they're all loyal to you, thinking because they want to help you and help the corporation, and you're rewarding them in the right way, then you can go 10 times faster.
It's leverage.
Because you only have one brain. You only have 24 hours a day. But Exactly. So it's leveraging. So seriously now, do you coach on training? Have you ever coached on training?
I don't, but I'll just give you the calls
give me
notes,
some
if you
tips
will.
then,
Okay,
for
so
free.
and when I get involved in a new ventures, because I often invest in people before the business, so I know tech and I can kind of figure it out when someone gives me a proposal. But the first thing I do is I actually look at the leader, because does the leader know what they're going to actually, can they pull it off?
Okay.
And so if the leader, if it's a great idea, but I don't think the leader's there, I'm not touching it.
No.
Okay. So both of those pieces have to be in place. But when I start a new venture, I start off with, why am I doing this? What's my vision, right? What's my mission around this? And it's not just for me. I have to clarify it for myself, because you may have a great idea, but where do you want this to head? What's the big idea? Where are you going to take it? And you need to know it for yourself, because now you need to be able to translate it to the team. The team has to buy into it. They have to want to be part of it. And every day that they wake up, they have to think about, why am I coming to work? I'm part of that bigger vision, that bigger mission. I have to focus on that. So that's the first thing that we have to do, and where a lot of people never end up doing that. Then you have to figure out what your values are. So what are the cultural values of the company? Do you know what those are? Usually there are 3. More than that, people start to lose track, etc. But what is the culture you want to instill? What's the brand image you want to be able to instill associated with those values? And they can't be fake, because fake won't hold. It has to be who you really are, and you have to be able to embody those values, and your employees have to be able to embody those values. So that all starts to become part of the culture. And then we have to empower people. And by empower, I don't mean, oh, you're responsible for this, and then don't give them any guidance, right? People work well with objectives. So you have to be able to identify what the objective that they have for, say, this year is. And then you may need to break it down into a series of smaller objectives for, smaller intervals, because everybody's a little bit different. But they have something to measure themselves against, and therefore they are performing against those objectives. And then some people are people that want to meet those objectives, and then there are more competitive people that want to exceed their objectives. They want to be able to say, I didn't just meet that, but I also did these other things. And they want to be proud of it, and they want to be recognized for it. And so we need to recognize those achievements when people do good things, and that helps them grow, and we need to celebrate their success. And you know what? If they're constantly exceeding their objectives and they show great, dynamics, then that may be an opportunity to give them more responsibility, promote them, if you will, right? And then sometimes if you do a really good job, they're going to be too good for you, and you need to let them go, right? Let them go and be who they need to be in another organization.
Or partner up with them.
Or partner with them, but whatever it may be, they may outgrow you. And I've certainly had employees in the past that have done some amazing things and gone on to grow and be their own people. So.
That's fair. That's okay. I've had this before too, and I'm so happy for them.
That's the trick. Okay, so it's not just about being fair, and that's okay. It's about being proud of them.
Very proud.
Yeah.
First videographer / photographer worked with me. I found him on Kijiji. He was 18, 19 years old when I first started my agency 4 years ago. And I would get a project. I'm a salesperson.
Okay.
We did about 1,000 jobs of photography and videography in 3 years. I don't know how to use a camera.
Right. Yeah.
But I know how to get the client. I know how to close the client. I know how to deliver and make the client happy, feel happy about this product. Even if there's a little bit of mistake, I will help him not to see it. So the product is right there. He's so happy with it, and they're just happy. So I'm very good with delivery and with sales.
And that's the value that you add in that role.
Yeah.
And that's your unique aspect in this. And though you're the owner, it doesn't mean that you have to do everything. And I always found that if one of my employees could do something I'm doing, I would delegate it.
Exactly.
And I would focus on the things that I'm uniquely qualified in the business to do. And it also ends up giving you a lot more time to grow the business and expand into new ventures.